Hi, Chris Holmes here, that coaching guy from Maryland, and want to talk with you for a little while today about radical hospitality and about how to help our congregations become more intentionally hospitable and invitational. So the interesting thing, though, about church hospitality is I've never met a church that didn't think it was friendly, right? Every church thinks it's friendly. The thing is, they're friendly to themselves. They're friendly to their own. So they talk to people on Sunday morning they haven't seen in a while, and they get caught up, and they have this great sense of fellowship. But that's not always the experience of a guest who is coming to church for the first time. In fact, some congregations, in order to get a better sense of this, a more objective sense, have participated in something called the mystery visitor or the mystery guest kind of program, where laypersons from other churches come with a checklist, and they then send that to the church afterwards, saying, this is how I was greeted by the usher. Did more than 3 people speak to me on Sunday morning? Were people genuine in their hospitality? Among other things. Those are things that can be measured to help us get a better sense, really, of how we're doing. Because most of us think we're doing great in this area, and we're not. There are some things that churches that are high in hospitality tend to have in common, and here are some of those things. They tend to have really clear signage for guests. So it's clear where the church office is and where the doors are, and they often have parking spaces that are clearly designated for visitors. They have trained greeters. Notice I said trained greeters, who do more than just hand them a bulletin on Sunday morning. And they also, highly hospitable churches have some kind of system in place of hospitality that goes beyond just saying hi on Sunday morning. Meaning, you capture the contact information for the person, and there's some kind of follow-up. There's a letter, there's a phone call, there's a visit, and a whole system in place for following up with those folks and helping them move from just being a guest to becoming growing disciples, considering membership within the congregation. I've also heard a number of pastors say things during the passing out the plates for the collection on Sunday morning. Something like this: we want our guests to know this morning that you are welcomed here. You are not expected to participate in the giving of tithes and gifts this morning. We're just glad that you're here to join in the fellowship of worship, and we hope you're blessed by this experience. Another pet peeve I want to throw out, and this may just be me, but I've visited enough churches over the years as a guest to know that if the passing of the peace, or whatever you call it, that turning to your neighbor and greeting thing, is longer than 1 or 2 minutes, it becomes very uncomfortable for guests. And that was true for me even as a district superintendent. Because think about it, you shake the hands of 6, 8 people around you, say good morning. That happens in a minute and a half. If it goes to 3, 4, 5 minutes, the people are turning to each other, they're getting caught up, they're finding out about it, they're interacting in ways because they know each other. It leaves those of us who don't know, who are not already ingrained and inculcated into the life of the congregation, standing there and pretty uncomfortable. So think about the passing of the peace and what that's like for your visitors. And hospitality, the kind of hospitality we're talking about here, really goes beyond just making sure there are marked parking places and, kind of a welcoming sense on with your greeters and that sort of thing. I mean, you can do all those things, you can have those in place, and people still may not feel that their experience on Sunday morning was really a very welcoming one. it takes more than that. I mean, it's creating a culture and an awareness of hospitality, where hospitality becomes a value for the whole congregation. It means that your staff, when your staff sit down and plan, they begin praying, planning, and working to reach and to include persons who are not already members of the congregation and involved in its ministries. They work to anticipate the needs of others. Churches with a culture of radical hospitality leave newcomers saying things like, I don't know what it was about that place, but I just felt like they genuinely appreciated my being there. And they really made me feel comfortable. They went out of their way to make me feel comfortable. And it didn't feel fake. And I didn't feel like a number or an outsider. And that is kind of an intangible thing that is, it's not just doing all the right things of hospitality, but really having people value that. It becomes one of the core values of your ministry and your congregation. Bishop Robert Schnase, I'm sure you're familiar with the 5 practices of fruitful congregations. It has a chapter, it's his first chapter in his book on radical hospitality. And there are a couple of quotes here that I thought were priceless that I want to share with you. The first is from page 25, where Schnase writes, "Churches that practice radical hospitality don't merely have ushers and greeters. They also train them, teach them, prepare them, and make their service a vital ministry. Their ushers and greeters don't merely point. They escort. They don't merely pass out papers. They make people feel at ease. They take note of names and introduce visitors to the pastors and to others. They constantly seek to understand the perspective of the newcomer and to see church practices and facilities from the visitor's point of view so they can anticipate those needs." Another quote from page 27 is, "Too many churches want more young people as long as they act like old people. More newcomers as long as they act like old timers. More children as long as they are quiet as adults. More ethnic families as long as they act like the majority in the congregation." The reality is that between 60 and 80% of our neighbors and the people we interact with in our community that are outside of our church do not go to a church, a mosque, or a synagogue on Sundays. They don't have a relationship with, they don't know the name of a pastor to call when a family member dies or there's a wedding expected in the family. 60 to 80% of the families that we sit next to when we go to our kids' plays and concerts at school or soccer games are not connected with a church. So there certainly is not a shortage of opportunity to be invitational as well as hospitable as we reach out to our communities. The question to ponder for our next time together on the phone is, what would help your congregation not only put in place the best practices of hospitality, but develop a genuine culture of hospitality and invitation?